Hi everyone, and welcome to season 3 of Njeri Talks. I am so honored and I'm so happy to have you guys here. Happy New Year, everyone. So for my first guest, I am delighted, honored, privileged. I don't know what else to say to have with me. Pat Mbugua, and she's the head of legal for Standard Chartered. Her actual title is extremely long, but I think it's head of CCIB, correct? Legal. We'll get into that later. But in the meantime, just to say that, for legal purposes, she's here on her own volition. It's her own views are being expressed and not those of the bank. So just that little disclaimer to start with. But we look forward to having you guys here for the rest of the year. It's going to be a brilliant year. Let's go. Pat, welcome. You are such a brilliant guest to have as our first guest for the year. I'm really honored to have you, and thank you so much for making the time. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Njeri, for having me.
So, Pat, let's start off with an easy one. Why law? Why did you choose to become a lawyer?
Actually, I didn't quite choose to do law, so it was default. I was primed from a young age to pursue medicine.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Okay.
Even my success card for KCP, my card from my dad read Doctor.
Really?
Kanyok is his pet name for me.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
But then life happened, and I ended up in law, and I can't say I regret it at all.
What do you mean life happened? How did it happen? What happened so that you could become a lawyer?
So I was a high achiever
and
used to do really well in school, but I didn't get the grade I thought I would in high school.
Were you disappointed?
I was disappointed.
Look at where you are now. I think everything works out the way it should, right?
Oh, it should.
Yeah.
It does. It does, absolutely. And I think that was the perfect result, because then it ended with me having to rethink my choices for university. And I ended up, redoing my choices, and law came on top. And when I look back, my strengths were actually in the law. I was good in English, written and spoken, and I like advocating for people.
Yeah. So the skills were always there.
They were there.
And you just didn't know. Yeah.
I just didn't know.
But now look at where you are. I mean, this is the culmination of a lot of hard work. And I know we met last year when you won. Well, you beat me as second runner-up in the Lawyer of the Year category at the Nairobi Legal Awards. Yes. How did you beat me?
Well, I wouldn't really call it beating, but I think that's more a question for the
jury.
I
take it as a beating.
I think that's more a question for the jury and the assessors. Yeah, but congrats to you as
Congrats to you.
It was so lovely to meet you.
And I think it's because of all of the stuff that you've done to prepare yourself to be Lawyer of the Year, essentially. I'm really proud that it was a woman. Two women, two of us. I think it's a good example for other women in the legal field who are doing amazing things as well. Absolutely. What did you feel about that night?
Exciting, exhilarating. At some point, the imposter showed up, imposter syndrome, because at some point I wondered whether I really qualified.
Why me? Why me?
Why me? But then again, why not?
Why not you?
Yeah.
Why not you? And it was such a pleasure to meet you at that event, and for you to be sitting here opposite me as well. So you started off your career at Kaplan, so very strictly in practice. Then you went on to Walker Contos as well as a partner, and now you're in-house, and I know that you went East African Development Bank as well. So why did you choose the in-house route in the end, and is that the end?
And just to qualify, Kaplan was a 1 month stint when I was in second year
I see.
in university.
Okay, yeah.
But that was really good because it then obviously popped in my CV.
Yeah.
So then Walker Contos, I was there for 9 years.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
But then I just decided I needed to grow in a different direction. And because I was serving most of my banking clientele in, the conveyancing space, I thought, what better move than to go into the banking world?
Yeah, so you're actually a real estate lawyer.
Yes, I was.
Oh, I see.
Yes,
okay.
I was a real estate lawyer, did a bit of commercial law as well, but mainly real estate.
Okay. And what is the biggest difference between being in-house and then being a practicing lawyer?
I think the biggest one, in my view, is having to be forced to be very pragmatic and offering real-time advice. So, I always joke that I miss having a PA and, the luxuries of a clerk. you know,
I would have thought it's more luxurious in house.
No,
Is it
not at all, not at all. So one of the things you have to quickly adapt to is being your own person in terms of your photocopying and everything, the admin, but more importantly, being on top of your game, because many of the transactions that we deal with are real time.
Yeah.
And there's a client at the end of it all.
Yeah.
So you cannot afford to, I'll come back to you later for most of the questions. Obviously, if it's a heavy thing, then you'll seek that indulgence. But more often than not, you have to give on-the-spot advice.
Wow.
So that's a huge difference. And I think most external counsel are starting to understand their clients intimately, because it's all about, if you think about it, a good lawyer is one who understands their clients, whether external or internal. Our clients are our business stakeholders.
Correct.
So if we understand the business, understand their needs, understand the need for quick turnaround, then it's a win-win.
And how much of it do you rely on external counsel, or do you try and do it all in-house?
And I think the benefit of having practiced externally for a long time is there's less reliance on external counsel, especially for the day-to-day heavy lifting. But obviously there's those transactions that you need external support, like our corporate finance transactions.
Yeah.
And also where you're trying to brainstorm. And one of the best, pieces of advice I get is where we're able to actually discuss the business needs. I can bring in the practicalities and then get the expertise from the external counsel, who probably has more time and resources than I do to do the research. Yeah. So that's the best partnership.
Yeah. So I want to talk a bit about your title, because it's quite long, because I read it and it says Head Legal, Client Coverage, Corporate, Commercial and Institutional Banking East Africa at Standard Chartered. So that is a mouthful.
It is.
That in itself can cover the globe. Can you tell us what all of these things mean?
Well, it certainly doesn't cover the globe, but it does cover
East Africa.
Yeah. And, put simply, we cover the businesses, the corporate businesses in East Africa. So that's your big corporates and, big MNCs, the multinational corporations who have subsidiaries here or branches here. And basically, if I could expand a little bit about the role, it's really plugging in very early on in terms of deal structuring, and then offering. So if you think about it, it's like the entire client life cycle. Yeah. So when they come on board, actually I should have started there. So when you're onboarding a client, the due diligence that's required, there's some legal nuances there. We offer that support. When they want to get transactions, going, they want finance, then you get on board in terms of the deal structuring. And then when things go a bit awry and there's some debt restructure or unfortunately realization, then you also come in. Okay. So if you look at it, it's really end-to-end support.
All right, that's great. So what is your day-to-day function like? What is it from waking up to like the end of the day? And what are the hours of the day?
Okay. So I would say that maybe perhaps a typical day would be waking up, looking at what's in the diary, what meetings you have. Yeah. And especially during COVID, one has to be very intentional, right? Because the tendency is you can jump up and straight into your laptop. Yeah.
Which is what we all did.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So it's being very intentional about having a routine. So waking up, doing your bit, and then getting into the day. So mapping out what meetings you need to attend to, and then sometimes new things will crop up. So, your day can't be really planned, and offering that support real time is important. And then also learning how to prioritize. We used to have a bit of a joke. When I joined the banking world, every relationship manager would say, my client is flying out today. Until I deciphered that it was code for, I need my matter
to be handled first.
But you discover some of those 6 months later that the documents are not back. So what happened to that client flying out? Yeah, so I think it's just discerning what you need to prioritize. Yeah. And also then being more of a facilitator, because then you need to empower your colleagues to also do a bit of the heavy lifting on that.
And is it you and the relationship manager as working in a team with the client, or how do you organize yourself?
Absolutely. In fact, a perfect example I can give is where a negotiation on some client documentation had gone a bit awry. So I jumped into a cab with my business colleagues and went to the client's office. Yeah. And before the meeting started, had a sidebar with the head of legal. It always helps when legal is aligned. So I talked with her and we were able to align on what needed to happen. So when we went into the meeting, I already had her on board. Yeah, so the business was quite impressed because, literally dropped everything and jumped into that crucial meeting because the deal needed to be closed that day.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I've noticed, having known you a very short time and also interacted with you in preparation for the podcast, that you're very, very efficient and you answer very quickly, very responsive. And I read also somewhere that you have a very effective management style, which is why you've been lauded as well. What does that effective management style look like, and what can we learn from that? What can you give us tips?
I think non-hierarchical in one word. If you set out to be a boss, I don't think you'll get very effective results. But if you are an inclusive leader, and then I like the style of situational leadership. So you it's not prescriptive. You can't be the kind of leader who has one sort of play.
So whatever you need to do at that particular time. I like that approach.
And then, like, if I can give a practical example, when at the onset of COVID, I was actually on leave that week. So my team member said, Pat, I'm thinking that perhaps just to get us together, we can do a weekly call, like every Tuesday, like 30 minutes, 15 minutes actually, and just to check on each other. And I said, run with it. And then when I came back, he said, so Pat, I'm handing over the mantle. I said, absolutely not. Run with it. And to date, he still steers it, and now is bringing other wider members on board to lead. So that then it's not about Pat, it's not about, the leader.
So also giving people opportunities to grow within their role.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
What do you enjoy most about your role?
I think it's just the interaction with live transactions, if I was offered an opportunity to be, I think, back in the law firm, I would struggle, I think, a little.
Why? Why? Tell us why.
I enjoy the direct interaction. I can walk across, of course, pre-COVID, walk across the room, and now that we're getting slowly out of the pandemic, and sit with my business stakeholder and, really discuss it. And it's real time. I don't have to arrange for a meeting necessarily. I can just walk to their desk. And likewise, and they find that approachability very refreshing.
And are you guys are still not back fully into work, or are you doing remote working?
We're doing it in phases.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, so I think at some point we might have to, be fully back. But for now, our bank actually, even before COVID, recognized flexi working. And when I was on a short-term assignment in Hong Kong, I learned the value of flexi working from my boss there.
Tell us about Hong Kong, and what was that like?
It was amazing. I mean, it was interesting because I was able to share best practices, like collaboration with, say, our credit teams, other stakeholders, was something that wasn't really readily done there. I mean, they have the volumes. They definitely make a lot of money for the bank. But in terms of our collaborative style and being plugged in with our other stakeholders, I think that I was able to sell. So it was interesting because I thought I was there to learn, but I ended up, sharing a lot of what the good we do here.
What is the thing that you think that you're most effective at in your role? What can they do without? They can't do without that.
Well, I don't think anyone is indispensable.
Are you not indispensable?
I don't think so.
I think I'm indispensable.
Nice. But I think the one thing that is appreciated across the board is my ability to be pragmatic. And actually, if I can just talk a little bit about how effective an in-house counsel can be, I think 4 things jump out. So the first is commercial acumen. You absolutely have to be adept. You have to learn new business.
Commercial acumen, for those who don't know what that means, what does it mean?
Right. That's a good question. I think it's basically adopting a business mindset. So I have a mentor who describes our role as not lawyers in the business, but businessmen and businesswomen in the law. I think that just says it all.
Business women in the law. I like that. I'm not
yes.
focusing on the men, but business women in the law. I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if I can just expound on that a little bit. So it's basically like if you're in a tech organization,
Yeah.
learn everything there is to know about tech. If
Okay.
you're in a banking sector, what do you need to know about banking, digital banking?
Yeah.
All that is sustainability, sustainable finance.
Yeah.
You cannot be the person who just understands their role as a lawyer and doesn't understand the business they're supporting.
And it's the relevant business acumen for the business that you're doing.
Absolutely. But it helps to have broader experience.
Yes.
Because, and my years in practice helped a lot. So I'm not discounting that.
Yeah.
Because I was able to do a lot of debt recovery and just very able mentorship from the partners at the firm.
Yeah.
And I was able to then adopt a mindset of, what do I need to do to get this client out of the woods, which when I've brought that in-house has been extremely invaluable. So it's not something that I would have trained for if I was going straight to in-house.
Correct. Yeah.
But it has served me. So I think having a thirst for knowledge, and I'm an avid reader, not as often as I would like.
No, from what I've known, the short time, you've already told me about the 4 books that I still need to read. You said business acumen. There are 3 others.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So the other one is being a pragmatic. I think I mentioned it before.
Yeah.
So, there's always risk to everything, and this ties into an article I read when I joined in-house. It's called The 10 Things That Every Legal Department Needs to Know.
Where can we find that article?
I'm happy to share it.
Please share it so that we can then share the link so that everyone can get it.
Yeah, because I think I can't run through everything.
Yeah, of course.
But the one that stands out and ties in with the pragmatism is legal does not run the business.
Yeah.
If every in-house counsel listening in can listen to that, legal does not run the business. Because we get tempted to, because when you are very efficient, people rely on you a lot. And they come to you for advice, even for things that you're not responsible for. So you can become the deal breaker. Literally, you can kill the deal.
Because you're always, putting a barrier as to what the business wants to do. And it is very easy to do because you're protecting, or you think you're protecting the client's interests, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's actually both for in-house and external counsel, I would say.
Correct.
And thanks for raising that, Njeri. Because sometimes some of the advice that we get, with all due respect, like I'll give an example for banking, the banking interest rate cap.
Correct.
And we got a plethora
of advice,
of opinions.
Yeah.
And people even quoted case law, and I was like, okay, there's no precedent. But then the difference with the counsel that we dispensed was these are our products. This is where the interest rate cap is going to come in. This is the impact. This is what we need to do. Going forward.
Yeah.
So that's a very practical example. And I remember actually one of our senior legal, counsel within the group observing that was actually really pragmatic advice.
I like that approach. What can we do as opposed to what shouldn't we do,
what the law and the Supreme Court said. So I think one has to. You cannot survive as in-house counsel, not for very long.
Correct.
If you do not dispense pragmatic advice. So that was the second. So the third is so we talked about understanding the business. We talked about pragmatism.
Correct.
We talked about let your focus be solution oriented.
Okay.
Right? So I'll put it simply. Let your let your no be respected.
Okay.
So it's sparingly given.
I'm so aligned on that. Because if you keep saying no, it doesn't help. And no one believes you because you're always saying no.
Exactly.
But if it's a no that's valid,
yes,
then it becomes more significant.
Exactly. So the idea is to, if someone comes to you and what they're proposing doesn't work, then you don't jump to a no immediately. You say, what else can we do?
Exactly.
Yeah. Explore other avenues. And I think that is what probably makes us stand out.
Yeah.
And my team, I can speak very, very, very frankly and honestly, are seen to be enablers.
I really
rather
like
than
that.
blockers.
Okay, amazing.
Yeah.
What's the fourth one?
The fourth one is, now that you have perfected the three, you can actually become the go-to person very easily. But you have to learn not to be a victim of your success. And I'm sure, many people grapple with the whole work-life balance. I'm not so sure if there's a work-life balance, but...
We'll talk about that, because I need to understand your point of view on that.
Yeah. So, but, you can get so good at what you do that unfortunately people then become, dependent, extremely dependent on you, which is not a good thing.
Yeah.
So you need to learn to separate what you're good at, what you dispense, what is your role, and what is someone else, passing the back to you.
Yeah.
So you need to push back. One of the things I really have learned is stakeholder management. Yeah. Bringing people around the table, especially where things are not going well and people are not taking decisions or responsibility. Yeah. And, forcing then that to happen in that round table. Because then it becomes very clear whose role is what. Okay. As opposed to, and then also avoiding the long emails. I mean, it can be death by meeting, but also death by email. So we need to be able to pick up the phone, which is one of the other things that that article by General Counsel in the US, Sterling Miller, says in his 10 things. Yeah. And he says, pick up the phone. And speak. Pick up the phone. Yeah. In my case, when, you're in the office, walk to the desk. Okay. Yeah. Perfect. Saves a lot of
Let's talk about the work-life balance. Yeah. What is there work-life? Can you have a work-life balance, especially at your level, which is very senior?
I wouldn't call it work-life balance. And one of our senior business stakeholders mentioned this one time, talked about its balance. Yeah. It's just really balance. Yeah. Because some days you will have to work those hours. I'm sure, Njeri, you can relate.
Of course.
But the midnight oil, there's a transaction that has to cross the line. Yes, you're nodding very, very, very.
Even at Christmas.
Tellingly.
Even at Christmas, yeah.
Oh, yeah. But then there are times when you have to just be intentional. Yeah. Like now, if I want to attend a music concert for my kids, I have to be intentional about it and manage my stakeholders and say, no, this one is a priority today for me. So I think and I didn't get it right for a very long time. Yeah. Still a work in progress. Yeah. I used to, I think, be a workaholic. So I'm a recovering one.
I don't know if I'll ever recover. Maybe I need tips from you. When you imagine
the downtime, it's being deliberate. You see, like how we diarize meetings, appointments. And increasingly with age, I'm having to do that more because my memory is just not what
it was. Of course. That's one of the things I've realized. You cannot rely on your memory anymore. You just have to be very intentional about planning things.
Exactly. Yeah. But it helps also to put pencil in like exercise time. Yeah. Yeah. For me, I think during the pandemic, that helped a lot. Yeah. And I was going through a bit of crisis. So the walking, and just getting out there,
taking time out,
had the twin effect of getting away from the work, but also, freeing me up from the stress.
When you think back on where you started from and going to law school, etc., did you think that you'd be here?
Actually, no. I thought I would retire in a law firm. I would retire in Worker Conscience, where I was. Life, it's interesting. It takes a different turn. I think what I've learned is to open myself, and my faith is an integral part for me. Yeah. Open myself to the journey God leads me to.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's really good to be centered in a faith that allows you the breathing room to really trust and believe in what you're going to do next.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about the future now. What is the future looking like? We're in a new year. Yes. You're here to inspire us with where we can go with our money. Yeah. So for the banking industry, it's going through a transition in terms of digital lending. A lot of people are unbanked, now relying more on digital lending. How do you see that going forward? And what are you guys doing about it?
All right. I'll speak personally because I can't speak for the bank.
You can't speak for the bank, yeah.
Yes. But definitely digital is the way to go. Yeah. And I think the COVID pandemic accelerated that for all of us, right? Who would have thought people could work from home? I felt like actually my team was ahead of the curve because we had practiced it
already
when I came from Hong Kong.
Okay, yeah. So you'd already implemented. Oh, good.
Yes, I implemented it. So it was a no-brainer, and we tested the VPN and all that IT stuff that a lot of people, I think, grappled with. So that was really good. To see that coming to bear.
How big is your team, by the way?
Well, right now I have a team member
One
because
team member.
my other team member retired.
Yeah.
Yeah, but of course we work closely with my clients and products legal
Okay.
partners. Yeah, so yeah, it's all about leveraging on partnerships. So yes, I think it's important that as we as we transit into this new space where we've discovered you can do meetings virtually, you can do a lot working from home. That we adapt to new ways of working, right?
And digital is it, I guess.
Digital is it. And so I think for me, it's how do I upskill myself as a lawyer working in the bank to prepare for that world? Or actually, it's already there. So how do I continuously prepare so that I'm not caught flat-footed? It's keeping abreast. It's just keeping abreast.
And how do you marry that with also, because you're East Africa head, so I guess you're covering the whole of the region. How do you marry that, and what do you see for the future in your role in East Africa?
I think it's basically touching a bit on the leadership bit, making sure that your team members are not getting stuck in their day-to-day.
Yeah.
So exposing them more. So, like I said, increasing your knowledge. So, and then also leveraging on the partnerships. So I partner a lot with my country legal colleagues in Uganda and Tanzania because I can't do it alone. I mean, I have one team member.
Yeah.
So how do you expand their skill set? How do you equip them to also attend if there's an LMA conference? And my colleague did that very well. My corporate finance legal colleague was able to empower our head of country legal in Uganda to actually, prepare for that webinar, and rather, conference, because it was happening in her space, as opposed to flying down there.
As opposed to you being there, yeah. So empowering people to do
to
roles where they can.
Grow.
Yeah,
to grow.
Yeah.
But also growing yourself. So it's about personal development as well. And also challenging the business. Like if you feel maybe they're not doing enough in the sustainability space, how can you challenge them to actually look at, different products?
Is that what you're interested in going forward, sustainability?
Yeah, actually, I think it's something everyone should be interested in.
I mean, it's definitely something that we need to be more deliberate about.
Absolutely.
How do you see that in your role as a sustainability, is it the champion? And what does it mean to you?
I think for me, it's the cross-border element has helped a lot because we have colleagues, like say, sitting in Dubai, or colleagues who are actually in the corporate finance space who do the sustainable finance transactions day to day.
Oh, I like that, sustainable finance transactions. Okay, yeah.
So it helps, but also just general, tips on sustainability. Like I can mention, I'm part of a running club, where we actually are patroned by our CEO here in Kenya and East Africa. And that helps because then you're also looking at longevity, fitness. But also we do get to plant trees on occasions with the various activities sometimes that we do in the bank. But moving away from the bank and, more to the personal, it is about how do I make myself future ready? How do I constantly, upskill myself? And we do have a learning platform. And in the organization,
which allows people to then upscale whatever they're interested in.
Data analytics,
I mean, that is so important.
Yeah, and even the soft skills. Yeah, because no one taught us that in law school.
Very true. Yeah. And we're always grappling, actually, even as a firm, with soft skill training and marketing training, how to market yourself, how to make yourself a better person. And I think if you're looking at January as the beginning of the year, anyone who's listening, this is a great time to decide on, what kind of thing do I want to upskill myself in going forward.
Absolutely.
And those soft skills are key, as well as, commercial acumen, as you mentioned before.
Yes, and I will mention one, mental health first aid.
I mean, please tell us about that. I've never heard of mental health first aid. You're the first person to tell me about this. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So as I mentioned, I was in crisis at some point and I needed support, and I got that support actually from a reverse mentor.
I love that. Tell us about that as well.
Yeah, we'll touch on mentoring, I guess. But that helped me get the support I needed. And it got me thinking that how do I pass this on? Because half the time people are walking around looking okay, but they're not. Yeah. So how do I become more adept at supporting? But also, how can I be approachable and be equipped just like physical first aid. I mean, I don't know the first thing about CPR. So, but someone who has done a physical first aid course will be
know what
more
to
adept.
do. Yeah.
So it's just the same thing. I mean, and in our community, African culture, we have this thing of, and allow me to say a little bit of Kikuyu, where you're going through
Please
a
tell us the
crisis,
Kikuyu.
grief, and then you're told, be strong.
Yeah.
Be strong.
That is a very Kikuyu thing. And by the way, please don't ask me to say it myself.
Yeah, but basically, I learned that some of these things through the mental health first aid course are not helpful.
Can you give us a tip? Sorry,
sure.
I'll let you finish. Give us a tip about what is the first thing that you can identify.
Actually, there is an acronym. It's interesting, Njeri, that you should say on how you can offer support. So maybe I'll share that later.
Yeah.
But the first one is actually approach, assist, and assess.
So AAA.
AAA.
Okay.
So basically, if I spot you somewhere huddled in a corner, can I approach? And then I can assist. I can offer assistance. Because it always has to be voluntarily. You can't force your support. Mm-hmm. So if someone is, amenable, then you can assess.
Okay.
So basically, it's drawing them out. What's going on? Do you want to talk about it? etc. So that then now you're able to assess. Because remember, you're a first aider.
Yeah.
You're not the professional. You're not a psychotherapist. You're not a psychiatrist. So it's just the initial assessment so that then you're able to then offer support, and the rest of the acronym does offer that. So, but one of the things I should mention, the second letter, is listen non-judgmentally. Yeah. And that's why the thing does not help, because then you're already assessing that this person needs to be strong, and yet they need to let it out. When I went through my crisis, I was strong. I was a ninja, but that was not helpful. When I got therapy, I was then now actually able to cry. Yeah. And it provided a lot of release.
I mean, I have to say, Pat, that a lot of people, we try and stick to the legal, Njeri talks, but a lot of people don't want to go into the personal. But I think it's so important for us to be human as well as lawyers. Absolutely. We're not just robots. And so for you to talk about your crisis and being a mental health first aider as a result of that, and understanding not only the business side, but also understanding what mental health first aid can look like within a business context. I think that is so important. And you should do more of that, because a lot of people don't know, or even don't know how to do, the approach. Is it approach, assess, and
assist and assess?
Okay.
But it could actually be assess and assist.
Yeah.
I think you're
approach,
right.
Assess, and assist. Yeah.
Yes.
I think that is so important for us to learn. So thank you so much for sharing that. I think that's really good. Let's talk about mentorship and reverse mentorship. How has that assisted you then?
I'm very passionate about people.
Yeah.
And I think also one of the things I've learned is that I wish I knew some things that were not taught in law school or in practice. Mm-hmm. I mean, basically, I've come to know them late in the day. Things like growth mindset. I mean, my kids breathe and live that, but I only learned the concept.
What is growth mindset? Do I even know what that is? I don't think I know.
So growth mindset is where you accept challenging. In fact, actually invite challenging feedback.
Oh, really?
And accept it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And basically, you're always looking at learning continuously. So I'll talk about it in. One of the nuggets I would share with young people would be intelligent failures. Yeah. So that's tied to that.
What is that? I mean, Pat, tell us, what is intelligent what did you just say?
Intelligent failures.
What is that?
So, you know how you can make mistakes, and everyone is always talking about, fail, safe, and create an environment where people can do that. Yeah. But it's only a real failure if you don't learn from it. Yeah. Right? So
it's an intelligent failure.
Intelligent failure.
Okay, good. I get it.
Yeah.
I get it.
Yeah. Okay. So what were we talking about again? Mentorship.
We have covered so many things. Okay, so let's stick to mentorship.
Let's stick to mentorship. Mm-hmm. So I have learned that if I can pass things forward, and I even do it with my kids, then I can save them a lot of the trouble. Not to save them from, learning from, because I think it's healthy to learn through experience, but there are some obvious pitfalls that we can avoid. Yes. So I plugged into, during the pandemic, interestingly, into an outfit called Girls for Girls. It's a non-profit.
Is it
and it's
Kenyan?
external. Yes, actually founded by Harvard Kennedy alumni.
Oh wow, okay.
Yeah, and so there's one of the founders is in Uganda, so it actually sprang up in Uganda. It's really thriving there. Then spilled over to Kenya. So I plugged in because my Uganda colleague at the time, talked about it, so I got interested. And let me tell you about healing through service.
Really?
It was the most amazing thing because I was in crisis, but it helped to actually be able to share. But one of the benefits also is then the reverse mentoring. In one circle, I remember one of my mentees was actually 60 years old. And she told me that when I grow up, I want to be like you. And I thought, wow, it's the reverse, I think.
Yeah.
Because one of the things that we used to practice is speaking, courageously, the art of presentation, for instance. And she did a pitch, and I was like, you nailed it.
Yeah.
100%. It was punchy, to the point, and there was a call to action.
Yeah.
So mentorship for me has been so beneficial. It's not a one-way street.
Yeah.
I'm also very keen on launching an in-house counsel mentorship program.
Wow, okay.
So I sit in the LSK in-house counsel committee.
Yeah.
And we're looking to do that hopefully over the next 1 or so years.
Yeah.
Really have a robust program where we can actually, benefit.
Amazing.
The profession.
And so at the moment you have like a circle in the Girls for Girls, you have a circle of people that you mentor?
So I took a break because I also had to be, intentional. But yes, when I was in it in 2020, I had a circle. And yes, there was a group of about like 5 or 6 or so.
I mean, I love that. I also have a group of mentees.
Oh, nice.
And I look for them for reverse mentorship as well. I mean, I've learned so much from them.
Yeah. Nice.
So in all of this, the thing that we've learned so much, but you're talking about being a focused leader, understanding the business that you're running, working strategically with your partners. You're talking about mental health and being a mental health first aider and understanding when someone is in crisis within the business context or even in a personal context.
Absolutely.
You're talking about mentorship and also the role that you can do, you can heal through service and the role that you can play as a mentor, giving people advice. And so we've covered those 3.
Yes.
What is your life philosophy?
So I think my mantra is there are 2 things that I think are irreducible minimums for me.
Irreducible minimums.
Yes.
I love that. Okay.
Integrity and respect. Even my kids know it.
Yeah.
Of course, in a more, condensed version.
Yeah.
But yes, those 2 stand out for me. And if it doesn't feel right, I'm happy to walk away from it, even if it can cost quite a bit. So those have been my principles I've lived by, and they have served me well.
I love it. Now that we've covered all of that, let's talk about the tips and tricks to working well. And this is directly focused on young lawyers who may want to just get advice from you on working and how to work better. Yeah. So first of all, what advice would you give to anyone who's looking to go into legal practice? What tip would you give?
Right. So the first one I think would be very measured in terms of your expectations, because I think a lot of the times people expect that in-house counsel are paid very well, they have the best life.
Are you not paid very well?
That's debatable.
Yeah.
So I think being very realistic will help. I would say, and it's not a one-size-fits-all, for me personally, it helped to have the experience in practice.
Yeah.
It really did, because it helped me dispense with the advice that I told you is needed like yesterday very readily. And I didn't know it until a business stakeholder actually pointed it out, that you're very quick with dispensing advice. But it helped. I mean, I left as a partner, so...
So you were already very senior in your role.
Yeah. Not even about the seniority, it's about the experience. Yeah. It's about the experience.
I guess senior because you had experience.
Yeah. There you go.
There you go.
But I think the 3 things that we weren't taught in law school that I would love for our young lawyers, and it's both in-house counsel but external as well, is build your social capital. That's the first one. Yeah, I'll touch on 3 things quickly. So build your social capital. Now, what does that look like, especially for an introvert like me? Yes, and I'm
Are you an introvert?
Oh, yeah. Is you have to go out your comfort zone a bit. Yeah. There's this theory of success that's called PI. So it's performance, image, exposure. And if I were to do a quick fire on you, what percentage do you think performance has performance, image, and exposure. What percentages would you attribute to each?
For myself personally.
For success.
Or for success,
for just generally.
performance. I would put performance more because I think you need to be worth your salt. So I think that you need to, have the experience and be able to perform at what you're saying before you can sell an image. And what was it?
Exposure.
And expose yourself, I think.
So you'd put performance.
Yeah, then I think it's credible. Performance, then image, then exposure.
And then exposure.
Yeah.
So can I shock you?
Am I completely wrong?
Performance is 10%.
Is it?
Oh, yeah. And then image is actually 30%.
Wow.
And then exposure takes a chunk at 60%. Now, I only learned that like 2 years back.
Yeah.
And I was a worker. I mean, work ethic is the thing.
Correct.
Right?
I would think that. Yeah.
But then I would wonder why some people progress very quickly.
Yes.
And others do not, like me. And I discovered, you have to enhance your exposure. So we've talked about, building your social capital.
Yeah.
So that means you have to look for ways in which you increase your profile and visibility, which means probably doing things you're not very comfortable doing, like doing a podcast like this.
But you're not comfortable. I thought you'd be very comfortable here.
Now I have learned.
Yeah.
But you can imagine, it was the first sort of experience talking to someone publicly. It would be very, 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 very difficult, especially for an introvert.
Correct.
So it's understanding yourself first, and then understanding how do I raise my profile, how do I get out of my comfort zone and still have time to recharge. But also and these people do a lot, they connect on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
But they do not make themselves memorable.
Yeah.
And it's a work in progress for me as well. So it's not like I've perfected the art. But if I reach out to, and I can give an example of you, Njeri reached out to me. Yeah. She reached out to me on LinkedIn after literally seeing me on the podium on the Nairobi Legal Awards.
Yeah.
And she actually asked if I could join her podcast. I was very intentional.
Yeah.
So how do you make yourself memorable? There was someone who did a talk, and I reached out to her, an MD, a very high-profile South African company, and I listened to her podcast, and she was so authentic. She's a Kenyan, running a South African company. I was just mind-blown by that. And I just reached out to
You need to tell me her name, then I can get her on the podcast as well.
She's a very private person, but maybe separately we can side chat. But I reached out to her and said, thank you for being so authentic. 2 years later, she acknowledged it, but 2 years later, she asked to meet.
That's so nice.
Out of the blue, she was in Kenya and asked to meet. So that's how you make yourself memorable. Don't just connect and then there's no message, there's nothing. What do you want to get out of this? So and build your social capital.
So, and I think what you're saying is that you can start doing that at a very young age, even when you are a young lawyer.
Absolutely. I was talking to a group of differently abled, students from USIU that come for a mentorship day at Standard Chartered. That at least I can talk about publicly because it's in the public domain. And we have an employability program.
I love that.
So I got to talk. I was actually on a panel, but I also got to talk to a young group of differently abled students. And they started asking all jobs, the usual. And I was like, but how have you put yourself out there? And this is competitive. Have you looked at our careers portal? But more importantly, have you cleaned up your image? Half of them did not have a LinkedIn profile.
Okay.
And I think many people wait for them to get a job.
For them to then say.
But then you want a job, but you're not there. And you've done a lot of things, student leadership. I mean, most of my skills were honed in as a young, prefect in primary school.
Correct, yeah.
High school, I was a house captain. So these things do count.
House captain, head of legal. Okay. In terms of your day-to-day, when you're working and there's a lot on your plate, how do you organize yourself? How do you make sure that you're getting things done? We talked already about prioritizing.
Right.
How do you then make sure that you're prioritizing the right things?
I think it's just about, I think it comes with experience, because initially you can get bombarded with all manner of requests. But I think it's learning to spot the urgent from the not so urgent. And I think sometimes it's just instinct. It's instinct. And also learning your stakeholders. So you absolutely have to learn your stakeholders. And one practical way of doing that, if you're in-house, is to plug into their segment sales meetings. So we have different business units. So there's one taking care of financial institutions, there's one taking care of global subsidiaries, there's one taking care of your local corporates. So if you can plug into their sales meetings, that way you become top of mind. And you can also arrest things very early on so that you're not accused of being a deal blocker when you're roped in at the tail end. So it helps you also learn to prioritize, like, okay, I get there's a plug. We need to plug into this gap. So we need to prioritize maybe this segment for now because they're behind budget, for instance. You can only learn that by getting to know the business intimately.
In terms of when you were a trainee, I guess, or a pupil, and you then decided on conveyancing, how did you identify that this particular area is the one where I will thrive in, as opposed to corporate or litigation or something else?
Actually, I didn't. So I was thrown
Everything is accidental, fact. Everything cannot be accidental.
I would say divine.
Divine. I love it. Divine.
So I was thrust into commercial and conveyancing. And I actually remember talking to the managing partner at the time of the law firm I was in and asking that I really wanted to do litigation because I had grown up watching,
LA Law, all of that.
All that. Read John Grisham,
Of course.
So it sounded very exciting, although the reality I'm told is very different. And that's what I wanted to do. But then there was a lot of focus and steer to, grow the commercial and conveyancing space. And let's just say I didn't end up, actually exposed at all to litigation. So I'll be like a duck out of water. I have every respect to litigation. So that's how I ended up actually in commercial conveyancing. It wasn't really a choice as opposed to being thrust and thriving.
Well, you're thriving now. Any other tips that you can give a young lawyer or someone who's looking to or working in-house at the moment?
Absolutely. So the other one is stakeholder management. And I think part of that is also managing upwards. And I know a lot of people struggle with that, be it in-house or externally. Because I think our profession is very hierarchical in nature. We have senior, which I've thrown upon myself. So anyway, one of the things that I think I've learned over the years, more recently actually, is to build my adversity quotient. So we talk about EQ a lot, emotional intelligence, even social, I think a bit. Cultural intelligence, I think more lately, especially if you're an international organization like ours, you have to learn that, because
all of these things are so key. I mean, we could do podcasts on just
on just each, right? But I really want to focus on adversity quotient because it's something I touched on at the first coffee talk for the LSK Nairobi branch, which I was honored to be invited to. And I realized that it's something that really affects our young lawyers. The stress of work, the stress of a toxic workplace, the stress of a boss who doesn't understand you. So, half the time, yes, you might think, let me jump ship, but you might jump from the frying pan right into the fire. So how do you also then start to develop resilience? So it's called adversity quotient. It's the component that is a test of the measure of your resilience. Right? So how do you do that practically is you learn, like now for me, I learned not to expect validation from, say, my boss or people around me, or even the business, because sometimes you'll have to give an unpopular, decision. And if you're the kind of person who's always gravitating to validation, then you will not thrive because you'll be affected. Njeri will say, Pat, that wasn't so good. And you'll be like, oh my God, you go through the rest of the day with a cloud over your head. But if you're like, okay, tell me about what about it was not good, and invite constructive criticism, and then separate the wheat from the chaff. If it's not adding up and you know yourself, then let it slide, just respectfully disagree and move on. And I think a lot of the times we shy away from challenging as well, and challenging upwards is important, and especially and that's the value of reverse mentoring. If it's a new field, who knows better than the young lawyers about digital?
Not the older people,
Not us.
Definitely.
Only recently I had an Instagram account,
Do you have an Instagram?
Now I do.
Good. We will link up.
So that's the one I would really focus on. Build your adversity quotient and get a mentor, get a champion, get someone who knows you well, demonstrates that you're valuable, make yourself memorable, as we said, and then have that person who speak about you. Build your personal brand is what I would say.
But
Yeah.
I think you have so many things to tell us, and really important things. I mean, these are all key things for people who want to build themselves, and things that you would think come naturally, they don't. You really have to build on all of those things. And thank you so much for sharing that, Pat. Honestly,
You're welcome.
you've been a brilliant first guest for us. Amazing. I'm going to put a list together of all of the things that you've said so that we can focus and hone in on each of those.
Sure.
And then everyone who wants to learn, you guys go ahead and learn some more. And we'll also put the article that you gave us as well.
There's one book I would really, really love to recommend to everybody. It's called Overcoming the Imposter: How to Lead with Confidence, How to Silence the Inner Critic and Lead with Confidence. It's by a gentleman called Chris Kelso. It's available on Amazon, Kindle, but also a hard copy can be availed. But it's so powerful. And I think one of the comforts I took away from this book is that imposter syndrome is more likely to be suffered by a high achiever. I mean, that for me was an aha moment.
I mean, that is a very, very key thing to say.
Yeah.
Because people wouldn't think necessarily, and I also suffer from imposter syndrome. I'm sure people are thinking that's not true. It's true. It can be
shocked,
really
actually.
no. It affects everyone. Where you're thinking you're in a room, and I even tell my friends that sometimes I'm in a room on a panel, and I'm like, is this really me?
Exactly. And one of the nuggets is to actually use that nervous energy to actually fuel your your presentation or whatever it is that you're doing, right? So it's not necessarily a bad thing to feel like maybe I'm not so qualified for this, but I think it becomes negative when you dwell on it to the point where
it prevents
you.
you.
It just kills.
Amazing. And I think what we can do, let me try and get a hold of a copy, and then we can give one away to one of the people, one of our listeners. Yeah. So what we'll do is we'll try and get a copy, and we'll give one away to someone. And I think that's a nice New Year's present. Happy New Year, everyone.
Oh, Happy New Year. Oh,
Thank you so
Jerry.
much. Thank you so much, Pat. So now let's do the fun part.
Sure. Fun part for who?
For me. Let's get to know you on another level. Thank you so much, Pat, for your time. Honestly, you've been a brilliant guest. I hope that I can see you in another forum as well. Just listening to you, you've given us so many nuggets. You don't even realize. But anyway, let's do the quick fire round.
Okay.
Yeah. Let's get to know you. These are questions that my mentees have come up with because they thought that let's not be too serious.
Right.
So yeah, okay. So beach holiday, city holiday. These are quick. No
Beach.
time to think. Beach. Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite place to visit. Quick. It's the first thing.
I would love to go to France.
Oh, you've never been?
I've never
Okay.
been.
My favorite place, France. Okay. Apple or orange?
Apple.
Pizza topping of choice.
Hawaiian pineapple.
Hawaiian pineapple. Okay.
Yeah.
Favorite drink?
Crest bitter lemon.
Honestly, not like a whiskey sour.
You
not
said
like
quick fire.
Okay. Thank you so much, Pat. You've been a brilliant guest and really
thank
nice
you for
to know
having
you.
me.
I'm sure I will get to know more of you over the course of the year. You guys, this has been a brilliant first podcast for the year. I can't thank you enough, Pat. And I'm going to put on some nuggets for all of us to learn at the bottom of the screen so that all of us are on the same page. Thanks so much, you guys. See you next month.
Thank you.